Book of Heaven, Volume 20, Part 9. November 16th, 1926. How each act of the human will is a veil that prevents the soul from knowing the divine will. Jealousy of the divine will. How it takes on all the offices for the soul. Threat of wars and of chastisements. My usual state of abandonment in the supreme Fiat continues, but at the same time I call He who forms all my happiness, my life, my all. And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, the more you abandon yourself in the supreme volition, the more you advance along its ways, the more knowledges you acquire, and the more you take possession of the goods that are in the divine will, because in it there is always something to know and to take. Being the primary inheritance given by God to the creature, and possessing the eternal goods, my will has the task to always give to the one who lives in this inheritance. And only when it finds the creature within the boundaries of its volition, then is it content, and begins the activity of its office. And putting itself in feast, it gives new things to its heiress. So, the soul who lives in it is the feast of my will. On the contrary, those who live outside of it are its sorrow, because they put it in the inability to give, to exercise its office, and to fulfill its task. More so, since each act of the human will is a veil that the soul puts before her sight, that prevents her from seeing with clarity my will and the goods contained in it. And since most of the creatures live continuously of their own will, they form so many veils as to become almost blind to knowing and seeing my will, their choicest inheritance, that was to render them happy in time and eternity. Oh, if creatures could comprehend the great evil of the human will, and the great good of mine, they would abhor their wills so much as to lay down their lives in order to do mine. The human will renders man a slave. It causes him to be in need of everything. He feels strength and light missing in him continuously. His existence is always in danger, and whatever he obtains is by dint of prayers, and with difficulty. So the man who lives of his will is the true beggar. On the other hand, the one who lives in mine has no need of anything. He has everything at his disposal. My will gives him the dominion of himself, and therefore he is the owner of strength, of light, and not of human strength and light, but of divine. His existence is always secure, and since he is the owner, he can take whatever he wants, nor does he need to ask in order to receive. This is so true that before Adam withdrew from my will, prayer did not exist. The word prayer has a footnote reading prayer of petition, so the full meaning would be prayer of petition did not exist. This is so true that before Adam withdrew from my will, prayer of petition did not exist. It is need that makes prayer arise. But he did not need anything. He had nothing to ask for or to impetrate. So he loved, he praised, he adored his Creator. Prayer had no place in the terrestrial Eden. Again, the word prayer here has a footnote referring back to the first footnote, meaning prayer of petition. That prayer of petition had no place in the terrestrial Eden. Prayer came. It arose after sin, as an extreme need of the heart of man. When one prays, it means that he needs something. And because he hopes, he prays in order to obtain. On the other hand, the one who lives in my will lives in the opulence of the goods of her Creator as the owner. And if she feels any need or desire, seeing herself in the midst of so many goods, it is that of wanting to give her happiness and the goods of her great fortune to others. As the true image of her Creator, who has given so much to her with no restriction at all, she would want to imitate him by giving to others that which she possesses. Oh, how beautiful is the heaven of the soul who lives in my will! It is a heaven with no storms, with no clouds, with no rain, because the water that quenches her thirst, that fecundates her, that gives her growth and the likeness of He who created her, is my will. Its jealousy, so that the soul would not take anything if it is not its own, is so great that it does all the offices. If she wants to drink, it makes itself water, that while refreshing her, extinguishes all other thirsts, so that her only thirst may be its will. If she is hungry, it makes itself food, that while satiating her, takes away from her the appetite for all other foods. If she wants to be beautiful, it makes itself brush, giving her brush strokes of such beauty that my will itself remains enraptured at a beauty so rare, impressed by it itself in the creature. It must be able to say to the whole of heaven, "Look at her, how beautiful she is! It is the flower, it is the fragrance, it is the color of my volition that made her so beautiful." In sum, it gives her its strength, its light, its sanctity, and everything, so as to be able to say, "She is a work fully of my will. Therefore I want her to lack nothing, to be like me and to possess me." Look into yourself to see the work of my will, how your acts, invested by its light, have changed the earth of your soul. Everything is light that arises within you and turns to wound he who invested it. Therefore, the greatest affront I receive from creatures is to not do my will. After this, he transported me outside of myself, making me see the great evil of the human generations. And resuming his speaking, he added, "My daughter, look at how much evil the human will has produced. They have so blinded themselves that they are preparing fierce wars and revolutions. This time it shall not be just Europe, but other races shall unite together. The circle shall be more extensive. Other parts of the world shall participate. How much evil does the human will? It blinds man, it impoverishes him, and it makes of him the murderer of himself. But I shall use this for my highest purposes, and the reunion of so many races shall serve to facilitate the communications of the truths, so that they may dispose themselves for the kingdom of the supreme Fiat. So the chastisements that have occurred are nothing other than the preludes of those that shall come. How many more cities shall be destroyed? How many peoples buried under the ruins? How many places buried and plunged into the abyss? The elements shall take the part of their Creator. My justice can bear no more. My will wants to triumph, and would want to triumph by means of love in order to establish its kingdom. But man does not want to come to meet this love. Therefore, it is necessary to use justice. And while he was saying this, he showed an immense brazier of fire coming out of the earth, and those who were near it were invested by that fire and disappeared. I was left frightened, and I pray and hope that my beloved good shall placate himself. November 19th, 1926. How the divine will is agonizing in the midst of creatures, and how it wants to go out of this state. My always lovable Jesus, drawing me into his adorable will, made me see and feel the painful conditions in which the ingratitudes of creatures put him. And sighing with sorrow, he said to me, "My daughter, the pains of my divine will are unutterable and inconceivable to the human nature. My will is in all creatures, but it is in the nightmare of a terrible and harrowing agony, because instead of giving it dominion, to let it carry out its life in them, they keep it repressed, giving it no freedom to act, to breathe, to palpitate. So the human will acts. It breathes freely. It palpitates as it wants, while mine is there only to serve it, to contribute to their acts, and to remain within their acts, agonizing, suffocated by the rattle of an agony of long centuries. My will writhes inside the creatures in the nightmare of an agony so harrowing, and its writhings are the remorses of conscience, the disillusions, the setbacks, the crosses the tiredness of life, and everything that can bother the poor creatures. Because it is right that since they keep a divine will crucified and always in the rattle of agony, the divine will calls them with its writhing, unable to do otherwise, because it does not have dominion. Who knows whether entering themselves, in seeing the unhappiness that their bad will brings to them, they might give it a little breath and respite from its harrowing agony. This agony of my will is so painful that my humanity, that wanted to suffer it in the Garden of Gethsemane, reached the point of seeking help from my very apostles, and even that I did not obtain. And the spasm was such that I sweated living blood. And feeling myself succumbing under the enormous weight of the agony of my divine will, so long and terrible, I invoked the help of my celestial Father, saying to him, "Father, if it be possible, let this chalice pass from me." In all the other pains of my passion, as atrocious as they were, I never said, "If it be possible, let this pain pass." On the contrary, on the cross I cried out, I thirst for pains." But in this pain of the agony of the supreme will, I felt all the weight of an agony so long, all the torment of a divine will that agonizes, that writhes in the human generations. What sorrow! There is no sorrow that can equal this. Now the supreme Fiat wants to get out. It is tired, and at any cost it wants to get out of this agony so prolonged. And if you hear of chastisements, of cities collapsed, of destructions, this is nothing other than the strong writhing of its agony. Unable to bear it any longer, it wants to make the human family feel its painful state, and how it writhes strongly within them, without anyone who has compassion for it. And making use of violence with its writhing, it wants them to feel that it exists in them. But it does not want to be in agony anymore. It wants freedom, dominion. It wants to carry out its life in them. What disorder in society, my daughter, because my will does not reign. Their souls are like houses without order. Everything is upside down. The stench is so horrible, more than that of a putrefied cadaver. And my will, with its immensity, such that it is not given to it to withdraw even from one heartbeat of creature, agonizes in the midst of so many evils. And this happens in the general order of all. In the particular order, then, it is even more. In the religious, in the clergy, in those who call themselves Catholics, my will not only agonizes, but is kept in a state of lethargy, as if it had no life. Oh, how much harder this is! In fact, in the agony at least I writhe. I have an outlet. I make myself heard as existing in them. even though agonizing. But in the state of lethargy, there is total immobility. It is the continued state of death. And so, only the appearances, the clothing of religious life can be seen, because they keep my will in lethargy. And because they keep it in lethargy, their interior is drowsy, as if the light, the good, were not for them. And if they do anything externally, it is empty of divine life, and it resolves into the smoke of vainglory, of self-esteem, of pleasing other creatures. And I, and my supreme volition, while being inside, go out of their works. My daughter, what affront! How I would want everyone to feel my tremendous agony, the continued rattle, the lethargy in which they put my will, because they want to do their own and not mine. They do not want to let it rain. They do not want to know it. And this is why it wants to burst its banks with its writhing, so that if they do not want to know it and receive it by ways of love, they may know it by way of justice. Tired of an agony of centuries, my will wants to get out, and therefore it prepares two ways. The triumphant way, that are its knowledges, its prodigies, and all the good that the kingdom of the supreme Fiat shall bring, and the way of justice, for those who do not want to know it as triumphant. It is up to the creatures to choose the way in which they want to receive it. November 20th, 1926. How all the divine attributes take on the office of forming the new little sea of their qualities in the soul. How everyone has a motion. I was making my round in the creation, according to my usual way, in order to follow the acts of the supreme will in it. But while I was doing this, my always lovable Jesus, letting me hear his most sweet voice in each created thing, told me, "Who is calling my love, so that either my love may descend into her, or her own may ascend into mine, so as to fuse themselves together, form one single love, and to give my love the field of action, in order to make arise in the soul the new little sea of her love. My love triumphs and celebrates, because it is given its outlet and its field of action. As I moved into the sun, into the heavens, into the sea, I kept hearing his voice saying, "Who is calling my eternal light, my infinite sweetness, my incomparable beauty, my unshakable firmness, my immensity, in order to form their cortege, and give them the field of action, to make arise in the creature as many seas of light, of sweetness, of beauty, of firmness, and so forth, to give them the contentment of not being kept idle, but of using the littleness of the creature in order to enclose all of their qualities in her. Who is she, then? Ah, it is the little daughter of our will. Then, after I heard him say to me, and in each created thing, who is calling me, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and clasping me all to himself, told me, "My daughter, as you make your round in my will, to follow it in each created thing, all of my attributes hear your call, and enter the field in order to form, each one of them, the little sea of their qualities." Oh, how they triumph in seeing themselves active, being able to form each one its own little sea. But their highest pleasure and delight increases in being able to form in the little creature their seas of love, of light, of beauty, of tenderness, of power, and so forth. My wisdom acts as a talented artisan, and with marvelous ingenuity, in placing its immense and infinite qualities in the littleness. Oh, how the soul who lives in my will harmonizes with my attributes. Each one of them takes on its office in order to establish its divine quality. If you knew the great good that comes to you by following my will in all of its acts, and the crafting it carries out in you, you too would feel the joy of a continuous feast. And then after this, I continued to follow the creation, and I could see that eternal motion that never stops, flowing everywhere. And I thought to myself, how can I follow the supreme volition in everything if it runs so rapidly in all things? I do not have its virtue, nor its rapidity. Therefore I have to remain behind, without being able to follow its eternal murmuring in everything. But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, all things have a continuous motion, because having come out of a supreme being who contains a motion full of life, as a consequence, all things that came out of God were to contain a vital motion that never ceases. And if it ceases, it means that life ceases. See, you yourself have a murmuring, a continuous motion in your interior. Even more, the divinity, in creating the creature, gave him the likeness of the three divine persons. It placed in him three motions that were to murmur continuously, to unite themselves to that continuous motion and murmuring of love of their Creator. And these are the motion of the beating of the heart that never ceases, the blood circulation that always circulates without ever stopping, the breathing of the breath that never stops. This in the body. In the soul, then, there are three more motions that murmur continuously: the intellect, the memory, and the will. Therefore, everything is in keeping your motion bound to the motion of your Creator, in order to murmur together with His eternal motion. In this way, you shall follow my will in its motion that never stops, in its acts that never cease, and you shall make your motion return into the womb of your Creator, who awaits with so much love the return of His works, of His love, and of His murmuring. In creating the creatures, the divinity acts like a father who sends his children for their good, one to a town, one to a field, one to cross the sea, and some to a place nearby, some far away, giving each one of them a task to fulfill. But while he sends them, he anxiously awaits their return. He is always on the lookout to see if they are coming back. If he speaks about his children. If he loves, his love runs to his children. His thoughts fly to his children. Poor father, he feels crucified because he has sent his children far away from him, and he longs for their return more than his own life. And if, may this never be, he does not see all of them or part of them come back, he is inconsolable. He weeps and utters moans and cries of sorrow, such as to snatch tears even from the hardest. And only when he sees them return into his paternal bosom, to clasp them to his breast that burns with love for his children, then is he content. Oh, how our celestial Father, more than Father, sighs, burns, raves for his children, because he delivered them from his womb, and awaits their return in order to enjoy them in his loving arms. And the kingdom of the supreme Fiat is precisely this, the return of our children into our paternal arms. And this is why we long for it so much. Then after this I felt all immersed in the adorable will of God, and I thought to myself of the great good if everyone knew and fulfilled this Fiat so holy, and the great contentment that they would give to our celestial Father. And my sweet Jesus, resuming his speaking, added, "My daughter, in creating the creature, as we were forming him with our creative hands, we felt a joy, a contentment come out of our womb, because he was to serve to maintain our amusement on the face of the earth and our continuous feast. So, as we formed his feet, we thought that they were to serve our kisses, because they were to enclose our steps, and were to be our means of encounter, to amuse ourselves together. As we formed his hands, we thought that they were to serve our kisses and embraces, because we were to see in him the repeater of our works. As we formed in his mouth, his heart, that were to serve the echo of our word and of our love, and as we infused life in him with our breath, in seeing that that life had come out of us, it was a life completely our own, we clasped him to our womb and kissed him, as the confirmation of our work and of our love. And so that he might maintain himself whole in our steps, in our works, in the echo of our word and love, and of the life of our image impressed in him, we gave him our divine will as inheritance, that it might preserve him just as we had delivered him, so as to be able to continue our amusements, our affectionate kisses, our sweet conversations with the work of our hands. When we see our will in the creature, we see in her our steps, our works, our love, our words, our memory and intellect, because we know that our supreme will shall let nothing enter that is not our own. Therefore, being our own, we give her everything: kisses, caresses, favors, love, tenderness more than paternal. Nor do we feel like remaining even at one step of distance from her. More so, since even the slightest distances cannot form the continuous amusements, nor exchange kisses, nor share the most intimate and secret joys. On the other hand, in the soul in whom we do not see our will, we cannot amuse ourselves, because we see nothing that is our own. Such a disharmony, such a dissimilarity of steps, of works, of words, of love, can be felt in her, that she herself puts herself at a distance from her Creator. And wherever we see that the powerful magnet of our will is not present, that makes us as though forget about the infinite distance that exists between the Creator and the creature, we disdain to amuse ourselves with her and to fill her with our kisses and favors. So, by withdrawing from our will, man interrupted our amusements and destroyed the designs we had in forming the creation. And only by the reigning of our supreme Fiat, by establishing its kingdom, shall our designs be realized and our amusements resumed on the face of the earth. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 20, Part 9. Fiat.